In the last video, I said I was going to start teaching some scripture in this video, but I realized that I forgot to mention a few important points. So I figured I'd go ahead and get them out of the way now. Those 2 points are the process of self-inquiry and the role of Sanskrit in that self-inquiry. Now, since we've been doing self-inquiry this whole time, then I should have mentioned this first point at the beginning, but it doesn't matter. We'll just clear it up now before we really get into the details when we go into the scripture. So the 3 stages of self-inquiry are Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. Mentioning these relates to the second point that I'm going to bring up, and that is the role of Sanskrit in this whole thing. Now, right now I'm telling you these terms, but I want to give you the English translation of them so you don't have to memorize them. Okay, so Shravana means to listen or listening, Manana means contemplation, and Nididhyasana means assimilation. So the first stage of self-inquiry, which may seem obvious, is listening. You have to listen to the teaching, expose yourself to the teaching, whether that be in a live situation, sitting in the same room as a teacher, watching a video, or reading a book that's a transcript of a live teaching. Any of those ways are fine. The point of mentioning listening is that it's not very easy to do sometimes. A lot of the times, if you've come to Vedanta, then you've already been around the spiritual world, so to speak. You've already been around the spiritual world for quite some time. And so you have picked up certain bits of knowledge already, and you have acquired certain beliefs and opinions. Now, it's fair to mention here that some of those beliefs and opinions, some of that knowledge is going to, or it is true, all right? It's more than likely that some of that stuff is true. But if it was all true, then you would already know what your true nature is. You would already know that you're free, and you wouldn't be here watching a Vedanta video looking for more answers. So just honestly, recognizing that, you have to see that some of what you know at this point is probably incorrect. And admitting that is a very, it's a difficult thing to do, but it's a very mature thing to do, a very positive thing to do, because as a seeker of truth, then we're interested in getting rid of things that may not be true and getting things that are true. But as I said, it's not very easy. That's why we mention that listening is the first step in self-inquiry. And that means listening with an open mind. You can't say, I want teaching, but I don't want to be taught. It's just counterproductive. It sets up a block in your mind for you to hear what's being said. So you have to take what you've acquired so far in life in general, or in your spiritual practice and spiritual practice and investigation, and take that stuff and just kind of set it aside for a minute. Just put it over there and leave it alone. Hear what the teaching has to say. Okay? Instead of judging the teaching as you're hearing it. Because that happens sometimes, when we're having a conversation with somebody or someone's telling us something, we tend to start formulating objections, criticisms, and replies whenever we hear something that we don't agree with. And in the process, we tend to miss what's actually being said. That can happen. You're having a conversation with somebody. It's very common, like with a girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, or wife. You're talking to them, and as soon as they say something that upsets you, you automatically start formulating these objections or replies in your mind, and you may by accident miss the rest of what they're saying and completely misinterpret what's being said, not actually hear what's really being said. Okay? And that's what we want to try to avoid here. Okay? Because there's no point in doing that while you listen to the teaching. Because why? Because if something really is true, then it doesn't need to be defended. To say, if someone says, hey, the sun is cold or the sun is dark, there's no real need to get bent out of shape about that and formulate some kind of objection, because it is true. It is self-evident that the sun is hot and light and not cold and dark. So you don't have to get up in arms about it. You don't have to prove something that doesn't require proof. Okay? Any beliefs or opinions you have, also, we have to recognize the limitations of those things. A belief is something that is a belief precisely because it's not been proven. Okay, that's why there's truth and there's belief. If something's been proven, then there's no longer a need to believe in it. I don't have to believe, like Christopher Columbus, that the world is round, because it's been proven that the world is round. Okay, it's proven that the world is not flat, so I don't have to believe that it's round. So recognizing that, you have to recognize that limitation of the beliefs and opinions that you have, because the same thing applies to opinions. You have an opinion about something because it's open to interpretation. You can't have an opinion about the truth. Again, I can't have an opinion that the sun is dark when it's obviously not dark. Okay? So it can be said, though, that some of your beliefs and opinions, although they have not been proven, may be in harmony with the truth. And we're recognizing that, but you don't want to let that get in the way of the teaching. Because again, if all of those beliefs and opinions were truth, then you wouldn't be seeking the teaching in the first place. All right? Now, once you've come to the teaching and set everything aside for just a moment, you just hear what has to be said. Okay? You listen to the reasoning, you learn the methodology and logic that Vedanta is presenting to you. You hear what Vedanta has to say about who you are and the nature of reality. All right? And after you've done that, after you've really listened, then that brings you to the second stage, which is contemplation on what you've heard. This is where you take that stuff back. You take all of your beliefs and opinions, okay? And then you have to look at them, analyze them, or scrutinize them using the reasoning, using the logic that Vedanta has presented to you. And this isn't always an easy process, because sometimes it requires you to throw away certain things that ultimately don't stand up to the light of scrutiny. If you have a belief, for instance, about yourself or about the nature of reality that doesn't stand up to common sense, reason, and good logic, then you have to just toss it out. But like I said, this may, for people that are really interested in truth, this may be something you're very enthusiastic about, because you would want to get rid of erroneous notions that could be hurting you, and you want to gain positive ones that benefit you. So you got your stuff, you've got the logic of Vedanta. I look at my stuff through that lens and I examine it. Now, I may find that some of the things that I believe or some of the things I have opinions about are in fact true. And that's a good thing. So then Vedanta reinforces that, converts that belief into a fact, and it no longer has to be a belief or an opinion. For the other stuff that is found to not stand up to scrutiny, it's got to go. Okay, so you toss it out. No problem though, because you've got a better alternative to it. Okay? I mean, if you're holding on to 2 stones, trying to make a spark to make fire, and somebody comes up to you and gives you a Zippo lighter, hey, gladly throw the 2 stones away and take the Zippo lighter. All right? So gladly throw away the erroneous notions, throw away the ignorant notions, and then take the truth on board. Okay? That is the contemplation stage. Also in this stage, even if you don't have a particular belief or opinion about something that you're analyzing, there may just be a doubt about what the teaching says. Like there may be an aspect of it that doesn't make sense. Okay, maybe you don't quite get something. And in that case, you kind of have to keep going back to it and thinking it over until it becomes clear. That's also part of the manana or contemplation stage. All right, so you toss out false beliefs and you clear up any doubts or misunderstandings you have about what the teaching is saying. But even once you've gotten rid of those beliefs or doubts, the mind being habitual, all right, the mind is just really a product of its previous conditioning. The mind being habitual may continue to spit out thoughts that are coming from those habitual beliefs and those habitual doubts about who you are and the nature of reality. So that brings you to the 3rd stage of nididhyasana, contemplation, or I'm sorry, not contemplation, but assimilation, because once you've contemplated these things, you have to dwell on them continuously until the effects of your previous beliefs, till the effects of your previous doubts fully go away. And it becomes habitual to think from the standpoint of the truth rather than those incorrect notions, opinions, beliefs, or doubts. So those are the 3 stages: listening, contemplation, and assimilation. Shravana, manana, nididhyasana. Okay, so those are 3 Sanskrit terms. And all of the source texts of Vedanta are in Sanskrit. It is a Sanskrit tradition. So does that mean that you have to learn another language to study Vedanta? And the answer definitely is no. The reason that I like to give some of these Sanskrit terms is just so you can get a taste of the tradition from which they come from, and so you can know that, like, I personally didn't create this stuff. I didn't create this teaching. It has not come from me at all. It was only taught to me, and then I can in turn teach it to you. Okay? So the nice thing about this teaching is that it can be taught in any language. In English, for example, in the last 100 years, almost all of the major Vedanta texts have been made available in pretty good English, and also been taught in good English. Thanks to teachers like Swami Chinmayananda, my guru's guru, and some of his disciples such as Swami Dayananda, my guru, Ram, and another one of his guru brothers, Swami Paramarthananda. Thanks to people like this, there has been quality teachings of Vedanta in English, and there's also many publications of the scriptures that have been made available in English. All right, the ideas of Vedanta don't depend on a particular language. All right, in the presence of a teacher who knows who they are, who understands the meaning of the text, then those texts can be translated into any language, whether it's English, Spanish, French, Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Russian, anything like that. It doesn't really matter, because as long as that person understands what's being said in the text and has a good mastery over their own language, then they can transmit that teaching in that language. And that is true for 99% of the time, okay? Because there are just a handful of Sanskrit words that just don't translate into other languages. In the case of the terms I just gave you, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, those terms completely and easily translate into English. Listening, contemplation, assimilation. So you don't need to know those terms. All you have to know is listening, contemplation, and assimilation. But there are many other terms like Satya, Mithya, maybe Maya, Ishvara, those kind of terms in Sanskrit that just don't have a proper translation into English. And so those are a few of the words that you are going to have to memorize. But later on in the teaching, we'll give you extensive explanations of what they mean in English. That way, when you hear them, you know exactly what's being said. I will make a note, though, that if you're inclined to, if you're inclined to Sanskrit, and you have a good memory for that sort of thing, it doesn't hurt to know the terms. Okay, all I want to make the point here is that it's not necessary for enlightenment, for permanent freedom, to know Sanskrit. Okay, this knowledge doesn't depend on Sanskrit. However, if you can memorize some of these other terms, it can be helpful to you insofar as if you're listening to a teacher who teaches in a different style. Okay, because some teachers, like Swami Dayananda or Swami Paramarthananda, when they teach, they are using a tremendous amount of Sanskrit terms. And so to really get the benefit of what they're talking about, it is helpful to know some of those terms. Or if you're just kind of reading scriptures on your own and they present certain terms that aren't translated into English, or they're using terms that can't be translated into English, then you are aware of their meaning, and you're able to do those things, approach those texts on your own and read them on your own. So for that purpose, it can be helpful to memorize some of the terms, although I want to reiterate that it is not necessary to know Sanskrit, to know how to read it, or to know Sanskrit grammar, or anything like that, to actually study Vedanta in the presence of a teacher who speaks another language besides Sanskrit, and who grasps and knows the materials. All of the teaching itself can be transmitted just fine in any language. Okay? So, with that being said, we've covered then the process of inquiry and the role of Sanskrit that is in it. So we can go ahead and progress on to the next video. And this time, I promise that it is actually going to be the scripture. So come back next time, and we're going to take up the first couple of verses of Tattva Bodh. Take care, everybody.